Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is Tom Zuck's U.S. Civil War Letters, 1863, Part 5, Victory at Vicksburg, Mississippi. Camp at Perkins Plantation, Louisiana, May 17th, 1863. My own dear Anna and darling Nettie, Sunday again has come, and with it, for me at least, a few-hour exemption from duty. For the last few days, the boys in our regiment have been detailed every other day for picket duty, for the reason that the country about this camp is said to be infected with numerous roving guerrilla bands. And as we are but 2 regiments strong at this post, you can easily understand why such vigilance is necessary. Good news about the fall of Richmond, Virginia has reached us, and you cannot possibly conceive what an influence such intelligence has on the boys generally. All are of the opinion that the rebellion is about played out. The night before last, 2 transports run the blockade past Vicksburg, and after daylight yesterday morning, a gunboat run past. None of them had a single shot fired at them, and the chances heretofore have been 2 to 1 against any kind of boat running by those batteries without running the gauntlet of fire and iron hail. This looks singular to me. Whether the rebels are evacuating or only baiting for a greater number of boats, I can't tell. But this I do know. If they allow any more gunboats and transports to get below them, they are setting a trap that will surely catch and overwhelm them in the end. Negroes are flocking to our camps from all directions and are being organized into regiments as fast as possible. All of them tell of the most shocking barbarities received at the hands of their overseers and drivers. They say Masser has gone and runned away when the Yankees first come down, and since that time, the overseer has been cutting and slashing without mercy. In some instances, whole gangs have been butchered to prevent them from falling into our hands. We have been expecting every day for a week to be moved to Grand Gulf, but as yet no order has come to that effect, and I have no idea now how long we will stay here. If the guerrillas will only let us alone, I had as lief be here as anywhere else in Dixie. But if they will come, we will give them a reception that will give them a good idea of the warm feelings we entertain for them. But upon the whole, I apprehend little or no danger. In the last few days there has been quite a number of changes taking place among the non-commissioned officers of Company D. Captain J.B. Williams is a great hand to argue in favor of the line of promotion going regularly through, as the new men have been appointed, or rather, according to date appointed, in following out this plan. Dave Batchelder of Morrow County became our 2nd lieutenant and has already received his commission from Governor Todd. Then came the vacant sergeantcies. They had to be filled from the corporals, and they lacked just one of being enough to let me in. But nevertheless, it let me up as high as 1st corporal. I was 6th when first appointed, and the probability is that there will soon be another vacancy, and then comes my turn. I don't care a fig for the difference between duties of corporal and sergeant, but then there is $4 per month difference in the wages, which would make quite a little item in the course of a year. You must not say after this that I have not been trying to climb the ladder of promotion, but I must say it is slow work. Even Godman has made but 2 steps since he left Camp Delaware. You know he was 1st or orderly sergeant then. I would like extremely well to know if Frank has ever been allowed to go home yet. Don't fail to tell me when you write. I wrote to Emma and Noni a day or 2 ago, but there is so little going on about here that would be interesting to them that I fear I failed to make a very satisfactory letter. I want to write a letter to your pa in a day or 2 and would have written before this, but we expected to be ordered to move every day, and I thought I would wait till we went to Grand Gulf. Enclosed you will find a leaf from the flower of the magnolia tree. It is from a large and beautiful specimen, and has a delicious perfume, and is of the purest white, and shaped something like the tulip so common in Ohio. No doubt it will wilt and change its color before reaching you, but I must close. Dear Anna, You will no doubt observe that many mistakes occur in my spelling and my writing is not so good as it might be, but you must consider the circumstances under which I always have to write. There is almost always someone trying to keep up conversation with me when I attempt to write, and I as captain of the mess must be very gentle and answer all questions, however annoying it may be to me. Even now one of the boys has just come down from the Mississippi River and is telling me that our forces are entering Vicksburg from the river. The cannonade can be heard from above all day. Something is being done, no doubt. Write as soon as you get this and let me know whether you got that money or not. I have never heard a word from it yet. Pray for my safety, dear Anna. Kiss little Nettie for her papa. From your ever affectionate Tom. This is a letter from John Zuck, Tom's father, to Tom. Marion, Ohio, Sunday, May 24th, 1863. My dear son. Again, this is Tom Zuck's father. I sit down to write a few lines to you to let you know that we are all well, and all our friends as far as I know. I feel grateful to Almighty God for His goodness towards our family. I ofttimes wish that you could be with us, that we might again enjoy each other's society. My prayer is and ever shall be that the war may soon end, peace be restored between man and his fellow. We have not heard from John Nelson for a long time. He has almost become a stranger to the folks at home. May the Lord bless him in his wanderings. He was once the only child and only son and much loved. Some years after, another son made his appearance in the family. He was an object of affection and love, but alas, today the former is to the extreme north and the latter to the extreme south of our once happy but now distracted country. I must desist from following this train of thought, for humans would only sink in sorrow. But an angel of mercy is at hand. That is hope. Oh, blessed hope of getting home, and above all, the Christian hope of an inheritance far out on the plains of glory, where there are flowers that never fade and springs that never fail, where the weary rest. No rebel there, no traitors, no copperheads, for they all have been cast out of that happy land. O blessed land! We received your letter of the 3rd and 4th in about 2 weeks after the date, and we're glad to hear from you, and we always are glad to hear from you. The money that Captain Williams sent home for you is in the bank. I took a certificate of deposit, and the $10 that Captain Barry brought is still here. We have not heard from Anna for some time. Paulina still has drawn her money and sent it to her. Each month $4, sometimes $5. We had a visit from your former Lieutenant Litzenberg some weeks ago. Uncle Joseph Zuck received a letter from John Travis of the 8th OVI. Since General Hooker's great battle in Virginia at Chancellorsville, he has said that his captain and first lieutenant were both of them on detached service before and during the battle. He had to lead his company in 7 days' fight. He said that he saw the horrors of war in its worst form. Harry Boyd came on furlough last week, but I have not seen him yet. Some 2 or 3 weeks ago, a squad of soldiers of the 115th OVI were sent here to catch deserters. They have succeeded in catching some 6 or 8 and have been after as many more. One of the squad was taken sick after they had been here a few days and died, I think on the morning of the 22nd. He belongs to the Columbiana Company, Ohio. Young John Hood died the morning of the 19th, I think. So you see, we are all going in a moment, and we are gone. Therefore be ye also ready. Look out. I must now tell you a scene, or try to, that occurred in our shop about 11 o'clock a.m. of the 9th. While Otto was sawing siding, I was standing on the west side of the planer, or northwest, some 10 or 12 feet from the main shaft. The main belt was thrown off the main pulley of the main shaft, and Otto stepped out to put it on again. And when he got to the end of the shaft, or the rest of the main connection, he seen Joseph Pearson passing over and under the main shaft, and Otto called his name. I turned my eyes in that direction and seen him truss over and under. I could not say how often the belt came wrapping around him before we could turn our eyes. The belt wrapped him so tight that it broke. You remember that is a gin gum belt, and since you left there has been another pulley put on the main shaft east of the pulley that runs the curding machine, and that pulley is 2 feet or over the space between this last and main pulley, perhaps 30 or 32 inches. You may recollect the 2 scanting that were put crosswise under the main shaft some 10 inches below through this space. Poor Joe passed as often as an ordinary motion of the engine would take him until it could be stopped. I had supposed that he was dead as the belt or the shaft that came through, but he did live an hour and a half, spoke, and was in his right mind. One of his legs was broken twice. One arm was all crushed. On the evening of the 21st, some 300 or 400 of the rebel prisoners that were took at Vicksburg passed through here on their way to St. Louis. They say they were kept at Vicksburg for some time, and then they were sent to Jackson, and from there they were sent to New Orleans, and from there our governor brought around to be exchanged. We have a fair prospect for an abundant crop of all sorts of fruit. My son, forget not the obligations that you owe to your God and to yourself and your friends. Put your trust in God. Be faithful. Pray much. I will still pray for you that the Lord may keep you, that you may return in peace to friends and loved ones at home. Write when you can and let us know your whereabouts. From your father, John Zuck. Headquarters 1st Brigade, 10th Division, 13th HC, rear of Vicksburg, Mississippi, June 14th, 1863. My own dear Anna, it is now near 2 weeks since we came into this camp, and in all that time I have not written to anyone. For the first 8 or 10 days after we came here, we had no knapsacks, and consequently could not have written if we had been so inclined. We came up to Warrenton, a place about 10 miles below Vicksburg, about the 1st of this month, and from there we marched over this rough country for about 15 miles to our position in our brigade. But only about a half mile from the line of rebel works that protect that doomed city. We arrived in this camp on Sunday and took up our quarters in a ravine immediately below our line of rifle pits, and began to congratulate ourselves upon the nice position we had got, so safe from the enemy's fire. But we did not long enjoy these dreams of security, for a charge of grape shot from a rebel cannon soon rattled over our heads, making dreadful havoc among the limbs and brush overhead, and burrowing themselves in the opposite bank of the ravine. The Rebs did not continue their fire any length of time. They had seen us go into the ravine, and as no other regiment had taken so near a position to their works in that quarter, they may have concluded to feel after us a wee bit. But as soon as our batteries got range of their guns, a terrible fire was opened on them, which caused them to immediately seek a more healthy atmosphere, and that was only to be found within the interior of their fortifications. Since that time, they have only opened on our division once or twice, and have not yet, as far as I can learn, succeeded in hurting anyone. Some of our own shell have wounded some of the men in our advanced rifle pits over which the batteries have to fire, and an occasional premature explosion of some defective shell takes place. You no doubt feel anxious to know something of the condition of things down here and what we are doing. Well, to answer that inquiry, it is only necessary to state that a regular siege is being conducted. The Rebs are all within their lines of works, and they extend clear around the city from the river on one end to the river on the other. Our pickets are in a line of rifle pits that have been constructed close enough to their works so that the pickets can keep them from using their heavy guns, while our artillery is far enough off to give them a fair chance to throw shot and shell into the rebel works, without being exposed to the rebel sharpshooters. Our pickets and theirs keep up a constant firing, but it is very seldom that any of our boys get shot up there. All of our artillery has regular hours for firing, and it is arranged that the thing goes on pretty steady all day long. So you see, the work goes bravely on. We are constantly creeping closer and closer to them, and their supplies are getting shorter and shorter, if we can give credit to the accounts of deserters that come into our lines almost daily. The story that they tell is that the rations in the besieged city are now reduced to to a small piece of cornbread and a few ounces of beef once a day, not enough for one meal. They have all of their women and children in the town, and members of them must get killed every day. But if they will continue to stubbornly hold the city, the fault is their own. All the boys in our company are well, and so are those of Company E. Last Wednesday, General Stephen Burbridge sent an order for me to report at his headquarters immediately to try my skill on map drawing. I reported my first map, and my first map gave him satisfaction, so that he had me detailed for the time being, and it may be permanently. So I laid down the musket and cartridge box and took up the pen and pencil. Now I am a non-combatant and hope I may have the luck to remain so till this war is over. I have traveled over all of our advanced works in front of our division and reduced them to paper. The general is a very kind man and treats us all like men should be treated. Barry Williams is in the same tent that I am in, and his desk is close to mine. We sleep in the same tent and all mess together. Our mess is composed of 3 generals, clerks, adjutant clerk, brigade quartermaster clerk, and 1 or 2 orderlies. We have plenty to eat, and that is good, but according to the late regulations, no extra pay. If my maps prove to be as correct as I think they are, you may before long see my name in some of the newspapers. I got your last letter and was so glad to hear from you. That little curls seemed to bring home, and my own dear ones so fresh to my mind that I can almost imagine to see them as I did 10 months ago. But that little curly pate must have 10 times the mischief in it now that it had then, and I would not begrudge 3 months' pay if I could only see her and her ma for a few days. Oh, Anna, you sometimes no doubt think that as we are now so far separated, that I forget you, and let the excitement of the stirring scenes around me carry away my mind. But ever near my heart is the image of wife and child, and as I feel the pressure of that little case against my bosom, I breathe a prayer to Almighty God to protect me, and then when the time comes, allow me to return safely to the idols of my heart. I got that letter of yours that contained one from Will and one from Johnny, and will answer them all as soon as I get time. I'm so busy now that I can scarcely get time to stop for my meals, but when I get 3 or 4 more maps done, then I will have a little more leisure. Father has received all of that money I sent him and has a certificate of deposit for $40 and $10 that he got from Lieutenant Barry, all safe. You can get it whenever you want it by writing to him. When you get this, write to Marion and tell the folks that you have heard from me. I will write again in a day or 2. Kiss my little girl for me. Pray for my safety and that God may bless me. I am trying to a little better than I used to, but it is very hard among so many temptations. But I must quit, for it is getting late. So goodbye from your ever-loving and affectionate husband, Tom. P.S. Tell the rest of the folks that I will write to them in a day or so again. Once more, bye-bye, Tom. Headquarters 1st Brigade, 10th Division, 13th AC, June 28, 1863. My wife and darling little daughter. This is Sunday evening, and as I have neglected to write in the daytime, I will have to do it tonight, or I won't be ready for the mail in the morning. I have been anxiously looking for a letter from you for the past week, but as yet have had to look in vain. We have not had much of great importance transpire in this division since I last wrote, but this division, on our right, General John A. Logan's, have been making considerable headway in the reduction of the rebel works on their front. Last Thursday, about 12 o'clock, an order came to those commanding the brigades to be in the rifle pits by 2 p.m., for Logan had completed a mine under one of the main Reb forts in his front, and moved at that hour to blow it up, an attempt to gain a lodgment in the rebel works in the event that all things worked satisfactory. We were to be ready to precipitate our division on the works of the Rebs in our front in case the Rebs should mass their force against Logan. About half after 1, everything in our division was in readiness, and Benny Williams, my friend Stiles, and myself took our position on a high hill that gives an extensive view of both lines for a long distance both ways. But 2 o'clock came, and still the doomed fort loomed as if in proved defiance of anything that hirelings and mudsills could do to sap its firm foundations. Time passed on. 2:30 came, and still no sign of operations on the fort. 3 o'clock and 4 passed, and we had begun to think that the whole thing was going to be a failure, when the cry came, "There she goes!" When looking again in the direction of the fort, we saw about 1/3 of the enormous earthwork slowly heaving, and the next moment a tremendous cloud of smoke and dirt rose high into the air, accompanied by a dull, heavy report that almost shook the ground. For about 1/4 of a minute after the explosion, all was quiet along both lines. But then a shout rang along our lines, simultaneous with the crash of 700 pieces of artillery and the rattle of thousands of muskets, that seemed almost to startle the very hills upon which we were standing. It was terrifically grand, a sight that one can see but seldom, even in such a war as this. Old soldiers that have been in dozens of battles say they never saw anything that would bear a comparison to it. This firing continued until about sundown, when it gradually slackened, and nothing was heard but the occasional crack of the picket's rifle as he pulled trigger, some hardy butternut that persisted in showing his head above the breastworks. By dark, all of our boys that were not on picket duty were again in their quarters, recounting the events of the day. No casualties happened in our brigade, but the poor Rebs must have suffered terribly, for I can't conceive how any being could live in such a tempest of iron and lead. There's always a calm after a storm, is the old adage, and it has been verified here for the last few days. Captain J.B. Williams has been down sick for a few days and is now at the division hospital, but is getting better. Last Thursday forenoon I received 2 months' pay, $26. I will send a portion of it home as soon as I get an opportunity. I want to supply my wardrobe out of it a little, but I must hurry this up or I won't get it into the mail. I have been surprised for the last week or two when we learn of raids that the people of Pennsylvania and Indiana are suffering from. Why will the people of the North permit the scoundrels to overrun and destroy their property? Somebody needs hanging. It makes me almost mad when I think of how things have been conducted for the last 6 months. The conscription law has been a law for 3 months now, and not a soldier has been put into the field, whereas they might by this time have had 200,000 more troops in the field and the war on a far way to be crushed out of existence. But enough of this for this time. You won't be surprised that we get impatient down here when the army in other places fails to do its duty. How is my little girl coming on? Does she realize that she has an absent pa? Oh, if I could only see her. I will have a little more leisure in a day or two, then I mean to write to all. But I must stop for this time. Pray for my safety. Dear Anna, goodbye, from your ever affectionate and loving Tom. Editor's note: on July 4th, Vicksburg fell. The Confederate forces there surrendered. And this was one of the biggest victories in the war because it opened the Mississippi River completely to the Union. It split the Confederacy in two. The same day was the victory at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Now, after Vicksburg fell, Tom had a 3 weeks furlough. He went to see his parents and siblings in Marion, Ohio, and then he visited his wife Anna and daughter Nettie in Marysville, Ohio. U.S. Post Office, Cairo, Illinois, September 14th, 1863. Editor's note: Tom, on his way back to his regiment, got sick and then ended up in the Army Hospital in Cairo, Illinois, and for a year. And during that time, he was sick. He worked there, and I think he was avoiding going back to the war. September 14th, 1863. Dear Anna and little daughter, the letter I promised in my last has remained unwritten until this time. I had hoped to receive a reply ere this, but I suppose you did not get the letter on account of your not being in Marysville, for I had endorsed it to that place. I'm still acting ward master at this hospital, but expect to be relieved in a day or two, when in all probability I shall proceed down the Mississippi River to rejoin the brigade, always provided that the doctor thinks me fit for duty. I don't know whether I told you in the last letter that the brigade was at New Orleans. They started for that place about 2 weeks after I left for home and went into camp at Carlton, a little place about 3 miles above the city. Our Corps, the 13th, is now no longer in General Ulysses S. Grant's army, but had been transferred to General Nathaniel P. Banks' army, and I expect their field of operations for the coming winter will be the state of Texas. I don't like it one bit, for it looks to me like riding a free horse to death. If we had been some poor cowardly sort of scoundrels like some others that I could name, we would in all probability have been put on duty at some post or other. But because our Corps has always been on hand, I expect that they will never wear out. I have not heard a word from home since I have been here, nor from anyone that I have been acquainted with, and it has been very, very lonely. Oh, if I could only see or be with you when these weary, lonesome hours come, I would be strengthened for almost anything that might come. But stern necessity forbids. I must tear myself from the scenes of home and loved forms and face and forget, for the present, that I am a father and husband. Oh, dear Anna, the thought remains, and I could weep like a child. But we must smother the feelings that thus vie to make us miserable and look forward with bright anticipation to our reunion in the future, quote, when this cruel war is over, and the soldier becomes once more a peaceful citizen. I have not yet written to the folks in Marion, but intend to today or tomorrow. They are no doubt anxious to know where I am and what I am doing. I could get detailed here if I thought there would be no fuss made about it at the regiment or brigade headquarters, but I dare not do it on that account. There is always someone who is minding every other person's business but their own. I wrote you in my last letter to send me those pictures, and will now say that I would rather have photographs of if you can get our little pet to sit long enough. But if you cannot accomplish that, why send me a good picture in case of yourself and Nettie. It won't cost much, and it will be a great satisfaction to me to look on when I get lonesome and feel bad. We forgot entirely to send the balance of that money to Father while we were in Marysville. You can get your pa to do it for you. He understands such matters and can secure you against any mistake. The thought of Milford man's impudence in writing to you has made me mad every time I have thought of it since you told me. But not mad at you, dear Anna, far from it. The idea of such sneaking scoundrels taking advantage of a lady in the absence of her proper protector is enough to make the blood boil in any man's veins. Poor Sue, I pity her, but can't help but blame her. I once thought her almost a pink of perfection in modesty, but must confess that my opinions on that score have been materially changed since I saw her last. But do not tell her that I said anything. She is occupying a position that is very dangerous, to say the least of it, for if once a bad man gains influence over a female, he will scruple but little to use any and every means, but what he will accomplish his ends and her destruction. 10,000 examples of this kind prove the truth of my assertion, but enough of such men are not worth the ink and time it takes to set them down in their proper color. Have you heard from Willie lately? I would like to hear from him so well. When you write to me, give me his address, and I will try and write to him occasionally. I suppose Frank returned to Cleveland the Monday after I came away. I did hate to come away so bad after he was there, for the old home circle seemed nearer complete, and this thing of sundering the ties of friendship approach is not the most desirable operation one would wish to undergo. How do the folks up home feel about the late news from Charleston in eastern Tennessee? I think the prospect for a speedy ending of the war is better now than at any time previous. Willie has seen the track of the elephant by this time, and I guess he will not think the sound of his tread so musical as one heard from a distance, for always in a case of this kind, distance lends an enchantment to the view. Tell Noni and Emma that I intend to write to them both before long, and I want them to write to me. I have not yet written to Charlie for the simple reason that I have forgotten his address. I recollect his company better, but whether he is in the 31st or 32nd Ohio, I can't for the life of me tell. There is one Negro company left this place for the South this morning. They have all been enlisted here within a few days. They make a very fine appearance in soldier clothes and learn the tactics rapidly. This Cairo, Illinois is one of the hardest places I ever saw in all my life. Murder in the street in broad daylight is not an uncommon occurrence by any means. A person is hardly safe out of doors after night. But the thing is easily accounted for the town lies, as you know, right at the mouth of the Ohio River, and the Illinois Central Railroad terminates here. All of our government stores for the armies of the West and Southwest pass through here. Here a great many of the hard cases that infest the Mississippi River congregate. But I must draw this letter to a close, for it is beginning to grow tedious. Write to me soon and often. I'm getting very impatient to hear from you. Tell Nettie that her pa would like oh so well to have a sweet kiss this morning. Pray for me, Anna. Goodbye from your affectionate husband, Tom. P.S. I will write in a day or two again. To be continued. That concludes today's presentation. We'll continue next time with Part 6 of Tom Zuck's U.S. Civil War Letters. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.